Hello, hello. Welcome to Human Design Coffee Talk.
Welcome.
So today we're just going to preface the episode with the gate or the the sun is in gate 17. And for those of you who know about human design, probably going to be a lot of opinions today. We've
Yeah,
got some opinions.
we've been trying to find a time to record because we were putting out weekly episodes for a while. But you know us, we just follow the energy, and we didn't have the energy to record last week, and we were both just like twiddling our thumbs, waiting for the energy. And then today, gave opinions. We're like, we probably have some opinions to share.
Uh-huh. Well, and last week with gate 25, it's just so everything now, that I don't know if those of you listening felt this way because this episode will go out probably next Monday. So by the time this is recorded, it'll be like a week and a half when it
I was
was
just gonna put it out
gate.
immediately.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I was just gonna edit it and throw it
get
up.
it. All right. Well, it's going out today or whenever it is. So gate 25 was last week. Um, and so if you guys notice that yourselves, just being more present, because that's what I was feeling like Teresa would check in. You want to record? I'm like, no. And it was just, I was just so present.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I also feel like I was in a weird, I feel like I was integrating a lot
Yeah.
emotionally last
Yeah.
week, and you were too.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about
Yeah.
our experience last
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I'm integrating something, I don't have a lot to say. Like I don't have a lot to
Mhm.
share because I'm still in
Mhm.
that soup of emotions and there's nothing that's fully landed, and it just didn't. I don't know. There were some days where I was like, yeah, I could probably record today, but it didn't really feel like an actual response. I feel like it was my mind feeling like I needed to record something.
Yeah.
And so it would just be funny because then Brandy would be like, I don't have a response. And I would feel relief like, okay, cool. I didn't really either. So
Yeah.
we're just not
Yeah.
going to force it. So
Yeah.
that's a much preferred way to create content other than being like the first 8 episodes we did, those just flowed out. We felt no
Yes.
resistance. Our guests lined up perfectly, and that's just how it was. But when it comes to forcing and pushing through resistance, we don't do that. So
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
we're here when
And
we're here.
and also the last episode that dropped was 3 hours, so you have plenty of time with Human
Yeah.
Design Coffee
That was
Talk.
like 2 weeks worth of content from us. And a lot of people were messaging me that like I'm only halfway through. I'm
Yeah.
listening to the rest of it later. I'm like, understandable.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. We've already had several requests for having Jazz on for a part two.
Oh, hell yeah.
So that would be great in the future.
That reel you made was so funny. Because that was exactly how it felt. Like you captured our
Uh-huh.
whole vibe
I
that
know.
night. Like I
Yeah.
remember Brandy and I were podcasting at night because Jazz is in Bali. And my husband like came home and had dinner for me because he was out with friends and brought me to go food. And I was just still in the zone with you guys. And I could like feel him waiting for me to eat because he was waiting till I got off to even eat his own food.
Uh-huh.
So it was just funny because I'm like, there's nothing that will pry me away from this computer right now.
Right, right. I mean, the delicious conversation paired with Jazz's 952.
That is
We're just
so real.
sitting with it.
Anytime I'm around a 952, my friend Olivia has a 952. She was like a spiritual mentor for me for a while. And I've always told her I feel so calm and grounded when I'm around you. And I
Mhm.
feel like I can actually sit still and meditate. And then one time I was working this part-time job and they were teaching me how to use the computer. And it was a thing where they would like put us in a room and we'd sit there and work on the computer and do practice things. And anytime my boss would come in, I would feel so much better at focusing. I was just like hammering down, getting stuff done. And then he would leave and I'd be like a squirrel.
Mhm.
And so one day, because it was a wellness center, so it wasn't weird to ask for your birth information and that kind of thing. So one day I just asked him, I'm like, I notice a big difference when you're in my presence versus when you're not. And I told him about human design. He was like, oh, I know about human design. Pulled up his chart, 952. Like
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
channel has such a presence, let me tell you.
Yeah, just have a little 952 buddy with you all the time, like
I wish.
body
Like,
doubling as with ADHD with a 952.
mm-hmm.
Mwah.
That'd be so helpful.
But even if she didn't have that channel, I feel like that conversation would have still been just as long and wonderful. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Hell
integrating
yeah.
from that conversation. And then Teresa and I have really been diving into emotional truth and what that's like for us. And so, for those of you that might be listening for the first time and don't know, Teresa's defined emotional, I'm undefined emotional. So when her and I have conversations about these realizations that we have, they are similar but have a different flavor, because you naturally think the undefined solar plexus, the not self theme, is avoiding confrontation and truth, but that doesn't mean that defined emotionals don't also experience that.
Right. Yeah, we can still avoid our own truth. And I think undefined emotionals can feel it when we're doing that. And for me,
Yeah.
having a lot of undefined, or I mean, a lot of unconscious emotional channels,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I don't really know until it's brought to the surface and made conscious for me. And I do notice I rely quite a bit on other people to kind of mirror something to me or
Mm-hmm.
bring something up, confront something for me, and then I become aware of that truth within me. But
Mm-hmm.
it's only through that reflection and also sitting and noticing how my body feels, because my mind really can't conceptualize what that is. And I feel like after last week and having this experience that we'll talk about, I'm sure you're on the edge of your seat wanting to know what it is. I got a much greater understanding of how my emotional process actually works with those unconscious channels, and how much I really do have to be paying attention to things somatically, and also how other people, like trusted people in my life, are integral to me observing my own truth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I can hide from it or just not be aware of it at all,
Oh, I can
which is
hide.
kind of
Yeah.
how last week felt. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
blindsided by my own truth right now.
Yeah. And for me, it was very much like I had awareness of it, but I was pushing it down. These are there, and there are multiple things in my life that I had this awareness around last week. And it was a lot. Some of them were unconscious and some were conscious. And I was just pushing it down, like not allowing it to like to take up space or have presence in my life or be a thing, you know, because of XYZ. What will other people think? Or what will I think? Or what will my husband think? There's so many layers.
So many layers.
And so, yes, having somebody bring it to your attention is like, oh, yeah, you see that? Because that's always been there. And I didn't realize how much energy I was exhausting by holding it in.
Ooh, talk to me more about that. What does that
So,
feel like to you?
a lot of it for me was based around not allowing myself to get too excited or too low about something. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, I have my right hand like flat and pushing down, my left hand flat and like pushing up. And so to show like excitement and like feeling disappoint, we'll just use disappointment. And so what I would do, what I noticed I was doing was create like holding the tension to try to hold them together in a straight line
Mm.
so that I couldn't feel the excitement or the disappointment. And also, I was doing that for people around me,
Mm.
not letting, like, trying to manage emotions to be like, oh, don't get too excited about this thing, or that's not too bad. And a lot of it just related back to when I was younger and, my expressiveness and my bigness and my emotionality that, undefined solar plexus. So I'm amplifying that around me, but I also have my own emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have defined ego to throat and it would come out loud and big. And I was just conditioned to keep all of that down. And while I'm aware of this and I've worked through these things, these things kind of come in layers and you realize more and more and more how much you've actually been doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I can start to feel the tension in my body as I talk about this.
Uh-huh.
Ah, hmm. And you realize how much of yourself you haven't even been able to meet because you're maintaining something. And it's not like maintaining a facade. It's not like I'm a fake person. It's not like my interactions were fake or not genuine. It's that they weren't as much of me as they could have been.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expressing myself as much as I could have been because I was afraid of how other people would feel, if it would push somebody away, if it would make me feel uncomfortable. Because if I acknowledge these things, then I would have to, the tension line of disappointment and excitement would shift, and I would have to feel one of those more or the other. And how would that show up for me? How would that express out of me? Because I've held that for so long that I don't know what it feels like to actually feel excitement in my body authentically.
Oh.
Like I can mask it really good.
Mm-hmm.
I can be excited. I can turn that switch on. But to really, truly allow myself to feel and immerse in the excitement and the joy and I'm excited for this thing that I truly desire, you know? Um, ooh, there has been times where I feel like human design has held me back from being able to have desires.
Ooh, hitting something on the money here. Why is that? Elaborate, please.
Because we can't want from our mind.
Mm.
But wanting and desiring are different things. Desiring for me is like in my body, it's this yearning. And I haven't been allowing myself to express that yearning or feel that yearning because I couldn't maybe decipher if it was actually in here in my body or in my mind.
Mm.
And also the narrative around human design, I'm a generator. I'll know what I want when I respond to it,
Yeah.
you know? But there's something to be said about tapping in and confronting the truths of the desires that you have
Mm-hmm.
and to feel it fully. And also recognize, like having that desire, oh, I found it, I recognize that. I'm excited or I have this desire. And then there's a part of me that's like, don't get too excited
Mm.
because then you're going to have disappointment. And so then I instantly go into the mode of holding that tension line straight. Like, oh, that's right. Okay. My level of excitement can only match the level of disappointment that I'm willing to feel. But why are we in these bodies? We are in these bodies to feel. That's the only fucking reason we have these bodies. Because everything else, like the only thing we can't do as consciousness is feel the full range of emotion
Mm-hmm.
and really feel it, like feel it in your body, because then we don't have a body. So we're here to feel. And if we're here to feel, then we need to allow ourselves to feel it all, the depth. And I have. And like I said, it's like layers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You peel the onion, you go in the spiral, all the spiritual sayings of whatever. But the truth is that I was avoiding the truth of having any desires by way of human design.
Mm. Well, and I think
And
there's wisdom in the 4130 for
yeah.
us
Oh yeah.
around this and
Yeah.
really learning about that channel. I have the hanging 30. You have
Yeah.
the 36, so you have
Yep.
something in that stream that's a
Yep.
conditioning receptor for you. And really learning about that 4130 and that the 41, you're meant to fantasize, you're meant
Yeah.
to desire. And there is this releasing of the fates, right?
Mhm.
But the 30 says, feel that desire fully,
Yeah.
feel it, claim it, whatever, and give it to fate.
Yep.
but it doesn't say don't feel it. It doesn't say don't want it. It actually
Right.
says focus on what you really desire, focus on one fantasy instead of all the fantasies,
Mm-hmm.
and truly lean into that. And yeah, disappointment is a part of life, and that
Mm-hmm.
might happen,
Mm-hmm.
but it's okay if you fully felt it.
Right. It's just the foreignness of like, it's the unknown,
Yeah.
right? It's the unknown of what is this? If I allow myself to fully feel this, what's it going to be like?
Is it going to be crisis?
Is it going to be crisis? Because that's all I know,
Yeah.
you know?
I can relate
And
to that.
yeah, right.
I'm like
And
preparing for the crisis of this desire.
right. And how we can like self-preservation, right?
Huh.
Of like, well, I guess it feels like a choice to allow myself to have excitement about something, um, versus when actually there's really no choice. It's just the damage. And I say that because I understand how the body and energy and frequency and health all works, the damage that we do to ourselves by suppressing those things. And
Mhm.
now this isn't any shame or to say go dig. These things were brought to my attention around the same time Teresa had things brought to her attention. And so it was like, fuck, that's that waiting. I waited to respond to something, right?
Mhm.
I had a response to look at those desires and recognize them as desires, and realize that I've been, yeah, just holding myself small
Yeah.
and also afraid to express them, because if I express my desires and excitement for something and it doesn't work out, then that's failure.
I feel the same way. I'm like afraid to tell people what I really want because then it's like people might ask you about it and it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, yeah,
And you feel embarrassed or
yeah.
shame because it hasn't happened. And even though,
Mm-hmm,
again, we have to give it up to fate, we have to release the desire into the
mm-hmm,
unknown and say if
mm-hmm.
it's meant to be, it'll be. Do what we can within our power
Yeah.
to make that desire a reality if it's truly coming from a response
Mm-hmm.
or from emotional clarity in my regard. But it is there's like a certain amount of shame or embarrassment in telling people what you want.
Well, also, applying our strategy and authority to that too.
Hmm.
So it's not just telling everybody what you want. It's
It's
waiting to
having a
it's
yeah,
waiting
having
to
a genuine
respond
response.
to
Hmm.
somebody who asks you a question around that
Yeah,
topic, you
that's
know?
true. Yeah, that's true. I have had that experience like the last week. And it's funny, everybody has given me the same feedback. It's just been like my close friends. I told my dentist because she was like asking what some of my plans were. And I was like, well, I have this desire. And I feel like it was actually a really good exercise for me because I felt
Hmm.
that embarrassment and that shame. I've been going to my dentist since I was like a teenager. So there's some foundation there. I know I'm going to see her again. It's like I I could feel myself getting embarrassed telling her, but also like I wanted to claim it, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm. Hmm.
But all of the other times I've told people, it's literally been because they've asked me a question that it's like they've needed that context.
Yeah. Yeah. There is that, because then it's like you're less likely, if you're waiting, if you're, utilizing your strategy. And I'm just going to say waiting to respond because Teresa and I are generators. But if we truly wait to respond and somebody asks us, they're less likely to shame us if the thing doesn't actualize, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like it's all correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's been a trip. I will say this whole experience has helped me really notice what is my mind and
Mhm.
what is my body in a
Mhm.
scary level, to a level that my mind is very uncomfortable with,
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
a shattering degree. I'll use that
Yeah.
word.
I think that's what we had a shattering break from this podcast. That's actually what was happening. We just
Like
realized that.
if this was AIM days, we would have had our away message on that
Yes.
says BRB shattering.
BRB shattering. I'm going to make a meme like that looks like that and just post it up every once in a while. Because you don't even realize that's what's happening.
Mm-mm.
But it's done the same for me too. And I'd be curious if everybody listening had some degree of, this type of awareness with, channel of initiation being in the transits. Let me see. It's still in there. Yeah.
I
No,
don't think it is anymore.
it's
I
coming
thought it was going to
back.
be there. Yeah, it's got to be coming back.
It's coming back. Yeah, I think oh yeah, it's going to be Neptune.
Mm-hmm.
Neptune is moving into it, but it'll be a little bit. But we'll have that for a while, I think. Is it Neptune? Yeah. Yep. It is.
So we're still in crisis.
Yeah.
Neptune for
So
the
we'll
time being.
have 25 for a long time. So I'd be curious what you were initiated into in the comments on YouTube, or you can DM us or comment on the post that we make for this episode on Instagram. I'd love to know, because I felt very much initiated into a whole bunch of stuff around radical honesty with myself,
Mm-hmm.
and literally every day it's been like watching the movie, but in this way of like, it's like a suspense movie,
Yeah.
And I think that's how I've been feeling since I've recognized that I can allow myself to be excited about something that might not come to fruition, or,
Mm-hmm.
And then just watching myself, it's like, oh, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
What's going on
Yeah, because we
today?
really don't know what's going to happen, right? And I think it's so funny. I watched my mind, like, okay, I had this mental plan for myself, right? And this mental plan was like, you're going to do this and then you're going to do this. And then confronting this truth, I realized, oh, what the fuck? That plan was so wrong. So not what's going to happen. Or at least
and
from where
every
I
and
stand.
and everything in your life was showing you that actually wasn't going to happen anyways.
Yeah. And it was still my mind like clinging to this plan of, but one day and maybe any day now, and I'll just have that response to get up and do that thing.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be amazing. And then it was like, skirt.
Yeah.
You're not doing that. And you're
Plot
staying.
twist.
Yeah. Plot twist. You're going to stay right where you are.
It's like when we watch a movie as like with feeling cognition and all of our parts of ourselves and our neurodivergence, where we can see what's going to happen in the movie. We're watching the actors, we're like, duh, of course that's going to happen, and they're like clueless.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. I mean, that's what
We're
it
like,
felt
why
like.
can't you see the scream
Yeah.
guys right outside?
And the only thing I have to compare it to is like, there's a feeling in your body when an opportunity comes, and
Oof. Yeah.
it's like it's a knowing. I have a lot of the sensing circuitry, and it's if you know, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You just have an inner knowing and you don't know how you know it. And I remember when I first got into personal training many years back, I had gone to this little school. I graduated. Everybody at the bar that I worked at knew that I was working towards this goal. And my coworker was like, hey, my cousin owns a gym. Do you want a job? I can probably talk to her about getting you a job. And the first time I talked to her on the phone, I knew that this woman was like going to be a huge part of my future. And I literally felt or even saw things playing out almost exactly the way they ended up playing out. Like there were details that were different, but it was like my body just had this knowing, like, this is very important. This woman
Mm-hmm.
is incredibly important to you. And it wasn't even like earth shattering, or even when I met her for the first time, it wasn't like, oh my God. Like, it was just this kind of very subtle, calm knowing. And it was the same thing when I got called out to start doing spiritual practitioner work, or whatever we want to call it. Um, it was a feeling of like, oh, this is going to be really important in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like you don't really know the details. You don't know how it's all going to play out. There's just a weight to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A wait and a wait.
Yeah. And then it's like things make sense. Like everything makes sense. You're like, oh, that's why I was here. And I have the hanging 29 off my sacral. And so there is a degree of, being at the right place at the right time and synchronicity. Even though I don't have the 46, I can feel that frequency there, because it's my gate's reaching for it.
Yeah.
So I technically have like wisdom to develop on the other side of that channel. And that's kind of how my life has played out with like weird synchronicities like that.
Mm-hmm.
So why would it stop now? It's just going to keep getting weirder.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fucking wild to watch. It's really been, yeah, it's been really cool to even watch everybody else around me kind of settle into that or how they're naturally doing it. Like my husband and the things that he's been going through this week with job stuff and watching that movie. And I'll call Teresa and I'll be like, the movie of Andy today. You wouldn't believe what happened in the movie of Andy and the job today.
For any projectors listening that have not listened to our episode with Brandy's husband, go listen. Because there's so much wisdom in that episode, and it's just wild to even watch his life play out, like knowing he's a projector, a 2-4 projector, and things coming through his network and him being recognized and invited. And it's just so cool. Like mechanics are real.
It's wild. I can't say anything on this episode. But trust that
trust
that when I can, I'm going to tell y'all everything.
I feel like our audience is probably like, you both are being so annoying, vague, and like, what? You're just talking about these ominous desires. What is happening? I know we're being so annoying. Sorry, guys. We want to tell you everything, trust, but there's a right timing for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Channel of Struggle we like to share on the other side of it.
Yeah. I don't want to share when I'm in the midst of the struggle. I like to share when I've overcome the struggle. Or at least gleaned a lesson from it,
Yeah, and we're just sharing what's going on in it without being incredibly detailed. Just, we don't hold back. I mean, if you've been a long time Coffee Talk listener, you'll get all the tea.
Yeah, you will. These are just like very private things.
Yeah, and the tea's still brewing. So
yeah, the tea still hasn't dinged its timer yet that it's ready to be poured. But we want you guys to know you will be.
Because we only serve the best, okay? We only serve the best.
It has to be steeped to perfection.
Yeah.
But I do want to shout out Tegan.
Oh yeah.
I think that's information that we can give. So this is part of the synchronicity of my life too. So Tegan is a friend of mine who's in Australia, and
she's in the HG community.
Yeah, she started out I think I got connected with her because she started out as a client. Tegan Parkinson is her full name. She'd done a couple human design sessions with me, and then we just became friends, as she's also a 2-4 like me, as fourth lines do. We hit it off. Her and I are obsessed with the same Bravo reality TV shows. We, kiki about those all the time in the DMs. And so we've gotten really close, and I follow her obviously, and she does human design and Akashic records. And
didn't we have a class with her?
I don't know, maybe.
I feel like we did.
But
not one of our classes, but like I think there was a human design class that we had with her.
I don't think so.
I don't
know. But I was just looking at Tegan's website one day because I was feeling this really strong pull. Like, she was talking about the Akashic records in her story, and I was like, I really feel like I want a reading with her. I just felt this really strong pull, and I felt that way for a few months, to be honest. It kind of came to fruition one day, and I was right about to book with her, and I had this little voice that was like, just wait, not yet. And she reached out to me probably the next day and said, hey, I want to book a tarot reading with you. I'm just trying to decide, like, which I don't think she was trying to decide whether to do a in person or a Zoom one with me or a recorded one. And I was like, wait a minute, let's do a trade. Because I want to book a reading with you. And we were like, oh my God, that works out so great. So we ended up doing a trade. And she was the one that really brought this desire forward for me and allowed me to confront this truth within myself in a very gentle and loving and curious way. It didn't feel at all like I've had certain readings with psychics in the past where they act like almost like they have access to this information that you're not aware of, and there's a weird power dynamic. But I think also because Tegan and I are friends, I felt really comfortable to be super honest with her and like talk about all my feelings that were coming up around this truth that she brought forward, just to notice how it felt in my body. And I could feel my energy like noticeably be different after her and I talked about this, and I had this realization and I felt all this joy open up. And even like everybody who I was telling and confiding in about this afterwards, they were like, you sound so joyful while you're talking about this. And this was like even up to a week later, you know, it wasn't just like an emotional high that I was riding. Like I went through a whole cycle, you know, in between telling some people. And it was like that feeling signature, like Brandy and I talk about, finding that feeling signature for yourself, that like you know something, like it's a yes or a no or a knowing. And it reminded me of when I got hired at the gym, and you know, when I started doing this type of work, like that same kind of response. So that's my feeling signature, and Tegan really helped me get to it. And for those that don't know, the Akashic records is basically like your soul's records of every lifetime ever, like forward and back. And when you do a reading, either for yourself, because you can open the records for yourself and gain access to them, or a practitioner does it for you, they'll give you the information that you need to know in that moment. And it's like nothing more, nothing less, you know? So there isn't this whole, I mean, it just depends on the person. But for me, like nothing about my past lives or anything came up, because none of that would have been helpful to me in that moment. It was just like, it was basically just one thing that I needed to unpack for our whole session. And to be confronted with that and be like, oh, holy shit, that is actually something that I want. And I just have been letting my mind fill me with so much fear and so many excuses and reasons as to why I shouldn't want that, or I don't have a response to that. It's like, this is where your mind gets so sneaky, and you could have a very clear response to something, and your mind's like, no, these are the reasons you shouldn't be responding to that because XYZ. And it's, in my case, a lot of times it's very fear based, and it's like anxiety, you know? So that was really wild to just have somebody hold me in that space and reflect that back to me. And then I was telling Brandy about it, obviously, and then she was like,
Yeah.
I want to do a reading
Well,
with Tegan.
right. So I'm skeptic slash huge fan of all things spiritual. Because I don't like people to have authority over me, you know? And I think and so I've lived with that for a long time. Like I would go to healers and, you know, I would see people because I was seeking something outside of me to fill something.
Yep.
And I've since stopped doing that. And I'm like, I utilize those tools as support, and I use heavy discernment with who I allow to access my energy in any capacity. There's very few people that I trust. And so when Teresa was telling me about it, I could feel how Teresa was feeling. I was like, oh, that's that feeling that I can't even describe it. It was like a cocoon of like, I don't know. I just tapped into Teresa's field and I could just I feel that. I'm like, holy shit. Okay. I want to book a reading with Tegan, and I'm sacral. So I'm like, right now, immediately. So I got on her appointment booking, and she's in Australia. So I reached out to her. I was like, hey, what do you have in US time? Blah, blah, blah. And it was just such a yes for me. And I was kind of shocked because I'm like, I don't really know a lot about Tegan's like history with this stuff, or, you know, but I just try, like my mind was kind of spinning, and a lot of times that's how I gauge that I'm probably doing the right thing.
Because your mind is coming up with all these reasons as to why you shouldn't.
Because my body is booking the appointment and my mind is like,
What are you
the
doing?
fuck, you know? Because also I'm very easily influenced. by somebody telling me something that, they'll say, you're going to pick up a nickel on the road, and I'll look for a nickel. And I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be looking for the nickel all the time. I just want to exist and respond and go on my merry way. So I booked with her, and I was shocked at how I felt in her presence when we were in the session. I just could feel that feeling signature that Teresa was talking about. I just felt really good and really, Tegan wasn't telling me anything that I didn't already know at
Yeah,
all.
it really reminded me of the same way that I read tarot,
Mm-hmm.
where the tarot is just reflecting back to me what my authority's been trying to tell me. And I've just been too thick-headed to be able to
Yeah.
accept it or
Yeah.
to even see it sometimes. So,
Basically, Tegan just picked apart the things that I was avoiding confronting.
mhm.
She was like, hey, just pointed them out, not picked apart. I don't want to say picked apart, but just pointed them out like, hey. And I'm like, oh, look. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That that's a desire. And she's like, yeah, I can see that. And I'm like, what? You know, I also thought I was like making up the desire or making up this yearning or trying to fill a void with this yearning. But it's like it was so deep in me that I was avoiding feeling it or saying it or allowing it because I didn't want to disappoint anybody or disappoint myself or deal with people's projections, or deal with my own shit around it. And so for her in my session, it was pretty much one topic, um, with a little sidebar of another little topic. I know we're vague. I'm sorry. We're still working through it.
I know my 62 is holding back, giving all the details.
I know. I want to give you guys all I want to spill it, but it's not ready yet. It'll be too bitter.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, and I really appreciated it. And essentially we really worked on um my expressing myself. And at one point she's like, oh, we just like pulled the cork off the top. And I haven't, I feel emotional saying it.
Mm.
I haven't felt the same since in such a good way.
Mhm.
Um, because I didn't go to her to like seek some mystical unknown knowledge. I was like, hey, I have big energy. It's hard for some people to hold it sometimes. And I
Mhm.
have trust issues and control issues, right? So let's look at these things and see if I'm making them up or what I'm avoiding. And it was just so nice to have like confirmation that what I was holding inside of how I wanted to express was like how I'm supposed to, right? And mind you, I can see that on my human design how I should, quote unquote, should be expressing. It's right there. Keynoted and everything, beautifully wrapped up in a package,
Mhm.
right? But we can look at our own charts over and over and over again. And she wasn't even looking at my human design chart, but like I can see the things, like the topics, the overarching topics that she was
Mhm.
talking about. I can see them on my chart. And I know that those are areas that I was avoiding, or things that I was avoiding, or things in my nature that I've been suppressing. And I'm just not doing that anymore. It's not an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like both of us had similar themes come up, like
Mm-hmm.
control, protecting people, like whilst holding back our own truth, our own desires, holding others back from maybe making their next step
Yep.
because that would involve us being honest about something. And that
Mm-hmm.
was something like this domino effect of when you
Mm-hmm.
confront a truth and you're able to share the people around you that it will impact, being able to see how things just start to fall into place, like for each person that you impact with your truth. And
Yeah.
I don't mean like manifest or impact, but like,
Yeah.
just the people that you're close to that your truth will affect.
When and when you're living in more truth and not avoiding it or just expressing yourself as you are, people around you naturally will start to do that. And that's what's happened to me the last week.
And then sometimes you realize, oh, wow, we want the same thing. We just weren't even talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Or we felt the same way. We both
Yeah.
felt the same.
We both felt the
Like,
same way.
yeah, we both felt the same way. Both felt the we felt like we were disappointing each other. That was the conversation Andy and I had after, because I told him all about this, and I was even I felt hesitant to even like share with him that I had that reading.
Mm-hmm.
But I just did, and we had one of the most amazing conversations after that,
Mm-hmm.
with like depth and
Yeah.
things that we have each been yearning for, and we both expressed disappointment in different about the same thing but different ways, that we were each holding on to that, and so we both got to let that out, and it was liberating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good word to describe it. It was like
Yeah.
liberating, and for me, comfort. Like there's a big signpost for me with an emotional authority has been feeling comfort within a decision and also feeling relief
Mm.
by making that decision or
Mhm.
not making a decision. It's like deciding that you're not going to even have that in your wheelhouse or whatever.
Right.
It's just not an
Yeah.
option, and being able to shelve something. Because that's happened a lot over the last couple of years where I'm like, oh, I actually feel relief in just not worrying about that decision right now and not really even confronting that. Or I feel relief in committing to this decision
Yeah.
and focusing my energy on this decision.
Yep. Yeah. And I
And
didn't and oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, as emotionals, I think we get so used to like feeling the high or the low of the wave and noticing that. And a lot of people get confused about what neutrality feels like, or what a yes actually feels like. And that's going to be different for everybody. Like, I don't necessarily expect these signposts to be like universal, but yeah, relief is just something that over the last almost 7 years of experimenting with this, that has been a very consistent thing for me. Even when it was a tough decision to make, even
Mhm.
when I maybe hurt somebody's feeling or let somebody down or XYZ, the relief has always been there.
And I think that's the difference with the defined versus undefined solar plexus, is that if you have an undefined solar plexus out there, it's likely exactly what you're avoiding. And sometimes you just don't have the words or the ways to express it. And so finding a way and a resource to do that, because it takes up so much fucking energy.
Mm, yeah.
And I think that's how I felt, as far as like I didn't have the verbiage. I didn't have the way to access it. I didn't feel safe to say the things because of experiences in childhood with my emotion and expression and my wants, and they're big, and they could feel like I'm expecting something of someone, and I don't want anybody to feel, I have this narrative that says I don't want anybody to feel like I'm expecting something from them.
Ooh.
Um
And
and Go ahead.
continue your thought. I have a
Oh,
follow-up question.
okay. To feel like, hey, I have this desire, this want, and then somebody feeling like they're expected to fulfill it for me, or disappoint me by saying that's never going to happen. I just didn't know how, and I actually didn't have to ever figure out how. Just being able to be seen and heard in that frequency that I was in Tegan's session, um, like opened it all up
Mm,
to where I didn't have to know how afterwards. I don't know
yeah.
how, I don't have to know how.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to figure it out or like
Especially with an open
plan
head,
or
that the
yeah,
mind is going to really want to try to, but well, that's cool that you want that, but how are we going to do it?
yeah, or plan how I'm going to say it so that I don't hurt somebody's feelings, or plan how to say it so that I manage how they're feeling about my feelings.
Mm,
When
mm,
really that's not my responsibility at all.
no, your
But
responsibility is just to be honest,
right. And I was raised to where I felt I was responsible for the feelings of the people around me. So I had to
control them.
keep it cool and control myself. And control my wants and desires.
Well, and controlling your own wants and desires and your own, it's like when undefined emotionals do not truly express their honesty, their truth when they know it, it holds other people back from feeling what they need to feel.
Well,
And I can see undefined emotionals trying to control because it's like, if I don't tell you, then I have control over you not having to feel those feelings.
absolutely. And guess what you're doing? Biggest thing that I can't stand is hope motivation is you're interfering with their process.
Yes.
How many people I was interfering with the things that they were supposed to experience and feel because I wasn't comfortable expressing my feelings because I didn't want to make them feel away. It's all fucked up.
And I was like kind of doing the same thing.
Right.
And, you know, and so this is why we're bringing this up because emotionals, even defined emotionals, still can avoid truth and confrontation and still want to try to control the way other people feel because I don't know how my feelings are going to affect somebody. And I don't want them to feel like I'm trying to manipulate them with my emotions or, you know, or, I think there's also like an ego and undefined ego thing here that we're teasing out, which I think is really and that was my follow-up question for you
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
I feel like defined egos are kind of there's conditioning when you're growing up around your wants being too much for other people.
Oh,
And when
yeah.
you have a want, it puts pressure on other people to make it happen for you because as an open ego, I'm not going to lie, like I'm surrounded by ego beings and it's a very intense feeling for me to feel the want and the expectation of a defined ego and to feel like I need to fulfill their desire or fulfill their expectation. And
Right.
so there's an interesting, like, if you just figure most of the world are undefined egos, like you're most of the time as a defined ego dealing with undefined egos. And there might be a weird energy exchange there of like, oh, I'm feeling the pressure of that big ego and I don't know if I can fulfill that. And then the ego feeling like, oh, my wants are too much because people around me are acting like it's too much for them to fulfill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing as a defined ego is to claim what you want.
Yeah. It is. And I think it's important for defined egos that are listening to, I'm feeling all the feelings right now. Woo.
Woo.
Woo. To really differentiate, to be able to discern between when you're willpowering something. Um, because from a place of willpower, you're pushing, unless that's your authority, right?
Yeah, for the small
Which
percentage
for this
that are
tiny
ego
percentage
beings.
that are ego beings, that's your authority. That's what you do. But for the majority of us defined egos, it's not. And you willpowering will actually create more disappointment
Ooh.
that you'll have to face and feel even harder. Yeah. That was also part of the conversation I had afterwards was my husband's defined ego. We were discussing something that came up and he was willpowering through something and not discussing it. And neither of us were discussing it because he didn't want to disappoint me. And instead
Oh,
he was just like taking on the disappointment and tucking it away
I
unhealthily.
I feel like there's a nuance here too, because I think what's really underneath that with defined egos is not having the will for it.
Not
And
having, yeah, yeah.
it's actually like it's like that's why it feels so hard for them to
Hmm.
knuckle through something, white knuckle through something when they don't actually have the will
Yeah,
and they're trying to like mentally force the will to be
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Especially for like 3740s
yeah.
because
Hmm.
that's they're ego emotionals. Like the ego plays into their authority.
Yep.
It isn't their authority, but it is there's an essence to it that is involved in their authority. And I think it's really easy for them to just like white knuckle through something when they know that they could be letting somebody down or not supporting somebody
Yeah.
in a way, or not providing resources for the tribe. And But then when they start expressing their truth, their emotional truth, it ends up being like, I actually don't even have the will for this, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
I can feel that as an open ego. Oof. When my husband does not have the will for something, he feels like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
He feels like he weighs 1,000 pounds
Yeah.
and he's trying to drag himself to do something and there's just no will.
Yep. Yeah. And with my husband, I mean, I'm very #blessed to have my husband will do anything to provide anything. I mean, I can tell him anything. He treats me like a queen. It's
You're like, I could want sour watermelon gummies and
and he'll
they will
go to
show
the
up.
store. I mean, like I could ask him right now and he'll go to the store. Like he's not like a dog, but he will provide
He
for
just
me.
wants to
He just
provide. Yeah.
wants
And
to
I've seen
provide
that.
for me.
And it feels like it genuinely brings him success when he
Yeah.
can make you satisfied.
Yeah. And so in this certain endeavor that he wasn't providing, um, but trying, he was feeling very bitter about it, like a failure. And why can't I provide? And it's because he was trying to willpower through, and because we had to have some discussions around the thing that just needed to happen, you
Yeah.
know? And I'm not judging the time that it took for us to have these discussions or who we were in that process, because I trust timing more than
Yes.
anything in the world. Like I trust the timing. That's the thing that
Yep.
human design. You remember when we interviewed Amy Lee,
Mm-hmm.
Lee,
Mm-hmm.
um, mental projector, amazing human design collective. Make sure you check out their podcast. Anyway, her and John Cole, when we had her on, she just had this, and I mentally understood it at that time. It was a couple years ago that we interviewed her. It's on our Instagram and on YouTube, not on Spotify, but she was like, I just trust the timing. And I can say that now, and my body believes it. Like it's a truth for me. I trust the timing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to read a raw quote on that note because I read
Yeah.
a really good one the other day on Justice's page. He posts a lot of raw quotes.
Hmm.
His Instagram page is at Justice KY. And I think I shared this in my story even, but so it says, this just reminds me of like the timing of things.
Hmm.
Waiting is alert non-action. It is not falling asleep as you wait for life to come to you in the correct way according to your type. It is being aware and watching and observing as you wait, watching life around you, watching others, watching your own thoughts, watching your mind judge you, judge others, and even judge your waiting. It's not about meditating or no movement. It is about being in your life as it is right now and stopping any further action. Wait, don't change your life, don't quit your job, divorce, start something new. Just wait and see what comes to you correctly. No one likes to wait, yet waiting is the only way to begin, to be rooted in your true nature. We are destabilized by our mind running our life. We are destabilized by continually meeting resistance. Waiting is a secret that shows us the door to ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. I feel like after last week, I can appreciate that even more. And I actually
Same.
feel like I can touch in on that more as far as harboring. I want to say harboring my truths.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say avoiding them. I want to say harboring,
Yeah.
because yeah, it just
The
feels more
truth was
appropriate.
cooking.
Yeah.
It was bacon in the
Yeah.
oven.
Harboring my truth in the crock pot. Um, what was it? Oh yeah. Allowed me, and like letting it out at the correct time, and confronting it at the correct time. I now have the capacity to do that,
Yeah.
to wait actively, to like to witness. Because I mean, and I'm sure you can tell in the conversations that we've had over the past week, it's a lot of like, look what I'm watching, you know,
Yeah.
look what I'm
Yeah. I've
watching, look what I'm
noticed
watching.
I've noticed a deeper surrender in both of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I will say Tegan has the 214, and I feel like she
Oh,
mutated us
well,
or
we got a
like
little
conditioned
mutated.
us into
Shit.
waiting to receive
Shit.
and going in a different
Shit.
direction
Shit.
in the best way.
Yeah.
That just hit me. I was like, oh, I feel like this is
Yeah.
the 214 at work,
Mm-hmm.
possibly. But because I feel like, yeah, ever since what it was like 2 weeks ago, um, I'm more anchored in that.
Mm,
Like I always understood that waiting was an active process in that it's a lot of watching and observing and noticing your body, noticing others, noticing your thoughts, everything Ross said. But I feel like that I more intellectually understood it
yes.
versus from an embodied place.
Hmm.
And it's like it's like deeper and deeper you go, you start
Yeah.
to unravel and you touch into it and it's like a little experience of that, a little glimpse of that, and then it's like, oh, I get it. And then something else happens and you touch into more and then something else and so on.
Well, so when I always like to use like metaphors and analogies so that everybody can understand it at like a kindergarten level. But when you have the flu, you have a virus and your body is using up energy to fight the flu, you're laying down because you're fatigued and you don't have the energy, you don't have the resources. Um, I feel like harboring our truths was taking up that resource is kind of like a virus to
Oh, yeah.
where then all we had was our mind to spin, like then we were so much more mental about it. And now that we've released that, open the crock pot lid, time to serve the truth. um we have we're freed up from the only thing we can do is sit there and think, to where we have the availability and the capacity to like watch and live and be active in life, um, without having to be so mental about it.
Yeah, now it makes sense why. Like, I'm not joking. Almost every tarot pull I've pulled for myself the last year, pretty much, I've pulled the Seven of Cups, which is this card that has all these different cups with so many different things in it. And to me, it's this card of when I see it, it's my mind is overwhelmed with possibilities, and
Mm,
my mind is thinking about all of the things that I could do or could be doing, and isn't anchored into like one decision or one path. Like again, that wisdom from the 4130 of like anchor into that one fantasy, feel your feelings around that one fantasy. Don't be looking in 1,000 directions because that's what the mind does. The mind will go left, right, up, down, like past, future. The mind can be anywhere at once. And so it just ends up being more confusing when you're like, well, I could do this or I could do that. And like, it doesn't actually matter until it's happening, and that's something that has been so helpful for me as an emotional authority. Like I think any authority, but as an emotional authority, when you feel like you're, oh, I'm riding my wave about this, oh, I might be doing this, I might not, I don't know. I'm like, it doesn't actually matter what you're riding your wave about until the thing is happening.
hmm
And like I've said this before, but it's a no until it's a yes, until you're doing it.
hmm hmm I just had an awareness.
Hmm.
So the topics that came up for us that we have been shattered about, we were, I can point to both of our motivations being in transference with those.
Oh, oh,
Think about it, bro.
bro.
Bro. Like it just dropped hardcore. Like I was like, I was in fixer mode around those topics. Teresa was in innocence around those topics. And it's like we
Dude.
just got snapped, right? Dude,
Oh my God. Why did this not hit us?
why is it hitting right now? We've talked about this shit for 2 weeks, like on the phone.
And we've been talking about it for an hour now.
I don't know. It just came in when you were talking. I was
Oh
like,
my God, because I was just like, I don't care if it happens. If it happens, it happens, which again, we don't have control over most things in life.
and I was
But
like, we need to fix this and take some action because it's not happening.
whoa. And I feel like what you just described, the whole after I read that waiting quote, what you just described was being able to like sit back into your hope
Yes.
and
And
to not
you're
intervene.
in desire. You're like, there's a fucking agenda here.
Yeah, I'm
And
like, I'm
you
on
were
fire. I'm lit up. I'm
you were literally
telling my
like,
dentist.
fucking, it's on the calendar.
hmm Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
And like not being afraid of that desire. And I know desire motivation isn't it is my mind, right? So it's not like I'm
Mhm.
literally doing this, but the way that so
How our
Brandy and I
minds handled the thing.
yeah, I
Yeah.
look at and this came from James Alexander, by the way. This is what we learned in his analyst training. The way he would phrase this is your motivation is aligned action after your authority. So if you have a yes from your authority, your motivation is your aligned action.
And so we had yeses. For my thing, I had a yes, but I didn't have fucking aligned action at all. And my husband was in transference.
Because he was just hoping.
And I bet yours had like a desire.
No, mine was perfectly in innocence, like
Oh,
always.
yeah.
He just said,
Okay,
I
he
don't
is.
know. I was just waiting for you to say something. I
But
completely let go of any agenda and I'm completely detached.
right, but
That's what happens
inside.
when you just
But
don't.
inside.
Inside, I'm sure he did, but he wasn't trying to like bully that desire into reality, which is how
Right.
innocent people can sound sometimes when they're
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
like
Yeah.
make their desires happen, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
and he has wanting view. And so, like, I don't know. I think that can be a little tricky with innocence motivation.
fuck.
But he's just always in his innocence.
You guys, awareness is in real life.
Mhm. That was crazy.
I'm glad it came
Wow.
up right
Yeah, I
now.
was
I would
literally,
have forgotten about it.
I feel like I've been in innocence a lot over the last year. I'm going to be honest, you guys.
Yeah.
I've been in innocence a lot, which again, it happens. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not trying to fix that. I'm just aware that it doesn't feel like me. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
to be in that majority of the time, I'm saying, like to
Mm-hmm.
be just sitting in there, camping out, calling it home.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally different if you're touching in and out,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm not saying I was in it
Watching
the
the
whole
pendulum
time.
swing.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. It's colors meant to do that. But I've been in an uncomfortable amount. And again, I trust things. I
Yep.
trust that that was what was correct for me. And now I
Mm-hmm.
have this awareness and I'm like, whoa, I really kind of needed that to learn about my motivation at a deeper level. And even over the
Uh-huh.
last like 2 days, I've been having like, I feel like, again, once you realize a truth, it unlocks all kinds of other truths and maybe even opens other doors for you. And I'm having like some realizations about my work the last 2 days, even, and getting some things to respond to and being like, oh my God, I thought I didn't want to do this. And now I feel like I'm having a response.
Uh-huh.
And maybe it's time to take some action
Uh-huh.
because literally I've had people in my DMs asking me for some stuff and I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute. Do I want to do that?" My mind has been telling me I don't want to do that.
Right.
And now I'm like, "Whoa, okay."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
And so that's why outer authority, like there's nothing wrong with outer authority. It's just that both Teresa and I had outer authority from Tegan, and it was like boom in the body. It was like my sacral was like, uh-huh, uh-huh,
Yep,
uh-huh, uh-huh, the whole time. Uh-huh, uh-huh. And
dude.
and then like to wrap it all up in a bow, there was like some information where I was like, uh-huh, that makes sense. That where it was like the broad, like no choice. Oh, yeah, you and Teresa think you have choice of being friends.
Which again, like there's a mystical side
Yes.
that I feel like I've been neglecting my own personal mysticism a bit.
Hmm.
I used to really identify as a mystic.
I
Um,
mean, 3955, bro.
I know. And the 1020
Mm-hmm.
mystical way. And second lines, like we're just spiritual bitches, you know?
Because you've been innocent about it all.
I've been
Like,
innocent about all of it. I don't know. I don't care, whatever. And I think even just doing this session with Tegan, like I used to play with the Akashic records and kind of open them for myself. And I feel like once I started really heavily experimenting with human design, I was just like, I don't need any of that.
hmm.
But there is an aspect of it that is really helpful for me and enjoyable. And I think you can use other systems or other modalities or whatever you want to call it, or just have your own personal mysticism and spirituality and way of relating to the world that doesn't, that's like not bad for your experiment. It's a part of your experiment.
Well, when we talked to Jazz, was sorry, everybody, my receptive brain doesn't have any idea sometimes where things come from. But when we talked to Jazz, last time, I almost said last week, um, she brought up the thing about the sound and how there's more sound on a keyboard that people, and if you're not meant to hear those sounds, you don't need to hear the sounds. And I think like with like around mystical systems and stuff like that, like Akashic records aren't for everybody,
Yeah, totally. Totally.
every other time for myself, Tiffany, the reflector that we had on here and interviewed, she can access them and does that stuff. She's like the only other person I would trust. And I've been a no every other time. But then when you're a yes, it's because like I'm meant to hear those sounds on the keyboard that can be played by that person.
Yeah. And I think, before I was really trusted my own authority, I was kind of like a psychic junkie. Like I would seek out answers all the time, especially when I was like really desperate. And it didn't
Yeah.
feel like it just came to me naturally through my network. And,
Mhm.
and I feel like the last couple of years I've barely gotten any readings or sessions with anybody because I just didn't want my process interfered with. I
Yeah.
didn't want my open head being hijacked and
Mhm.
just giving me more things to think about that really don't matter. So again, strategy and authority will lead you to the correct outer authority for you, or the
Yep.
support or the direction, the empowerment, the um
Yeah.
the sharing, whatever will lead you to the correct person. And outer authority is really important,
Yeah. Yeah.
clearly. Or even just like, again, having somebody shine light on something that you've been
Mhm.
too afraid to talk about
Gate 36.
because of the crisis, the darkening of the light.
The darkening of the light. Because yeah, that's what comes next. You shine a light on it, and then you can see everything. Like shit.
Yeah. And I do want to say, like, you were talking about yearning and desire a lot. And there's a big difference between having a yearning or having a desire and wanting to control your life.
Oh,
And that's the biggest
boom.
thing that human design has taught me is we you have to release that control
Hmm.
to the form, to your body. Your body will take you where you need to go and do what you need to do. But the mind trying to control, it's almost like the mind kind of hijacks desire, because I think there can be pure desires that come from our body, but the mind can hijack that and be like, I'm gonna make this happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because then
I'm
you'll
gonna,
you'll try to figure out a way, and then you
yes.
won't you won't have access to, in our case, respond to the things that are for you because you'll be too busy trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And I feel like I never like, the whole concept of detachment was always thrown around in the spiritual spaces. And I didn't really understand that until, because it's like they would say, well, you should still want things, but release it, detach from it. And I'm like, how can
Detach,
you do both at
right?
once?
Detach from the outcome, or the detach from how it happens.
Yeah.
There's a way of bypassing that can be very easily done with that too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting, but it's just like, because again, the unknown is scary. And if you control things, you know how they're going to play out,
Yep.
like something super mundane. Like I did hair for 15 years. My husband just started seeing a barber. That's me releasing control. That's not what came up in the reading, but
You be
uh
not trying to fix it.
not trying to fix it, or because I can control that, I know it will look good if I do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And that's me controlling it. So how can I practice releasing control in these little things, because the mundane shit is actually what matters. That's the foundation,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And practicing that, and, you know, letting somebody else paint my nails because I have control issues and perfectionism. It's these little things of where we can release that. But in the bigger scheme of things, it's like, because in the unknown, if things stay the same, there's no growth, right? And no growth is comfortable because you know what's going to happen. And releasing control, you're like, okay, I'm open to the possibility of growth. I don't know if it's actually going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, and that's terrifying. I could be
Yeah.
setting myself up to feel a bunch of feelings I don't want to feel. If I can
Mm-hmm.
control it, I can also control how I'm going to feel about it.
Yeah. Not feeling the disappointment.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's funny with me because I notice that my mind actually goes to like big changes and like channel struggle, fully conscious. Um, my mind goes to like, how can we change things? How can we mutate? How
Mm-hmm.
can we shift things because you're stuck right now
Yeah.
and you need to change?
Yeah.
And my body's actually like, I'm fine waiting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm chilling,
Yeah.
not feeling the urge to push and force something and make a big change.
Put up a
And it's
fight.
like if it were up to my mind, I would have changed everything a million times the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm experiencing something in work right now where I want to fight some corporations.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm waiting to respond, you know.
Because it might be
I'm
the correct struggle for you.
it yeah. So I'm still have to wait for an email response. I'm waiting to respond, but I'm feeling the anger build and I'm feeling my mind be like, you better fight them. You better tell them how mad you are so they start just pick a fight with them. Just
Yeah.
pick a fight. Pick a fight. While you're waiting, pick a fight.
Use your big old ego.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't need to pick a fight. I've said what I need to say. I've fully expressed myself as I've needed to. And now
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting. And if I don't get a response, I did put a deadline on it.
Yeah.
But because it's
Okay.
a professional world where you
Yeah.
should respond. So,
Riddle me this.
yeah.
As an undefined emotional, and this is going to vary based on what hanging gates you have, whether you're open emotional, whatever. We're kind of taught that undefined emotionals are not taught. I don't want to say that. I would say there's like misinformation that goes
Mm,
around about undefined emotionals. And I think people hear, oh, I don't have consistent access to emotions, or it's like in my not self to be in my feels, or I don't know. I've just heard all sorts of things about,
mhm, mhm.
people kind of like misinterpreting the information and
Yeah,
thinking, oh, I must not be, I'm not meant to be an emotional person if I'm an undefined emotional.
that's not true for
No,
me
it's not true at
in
all.
my experience.
I
Yeah.
would say like the only caveat might be completely open emotionals that are like they're still emotional people, of course, but they might not know how they feel
Yeah.
because
I
that's
could.
kind of the like not knowing how to feel,
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
um kind of a keynote for the open emotional. But again, it doesn't mean that you don't have emotions, and it doesn't mean that you're in the not self if you're feeling your feelings and you're
Right,
expressing your feelings.
right. That's why I think alone time is very important.
Mm.
And even alone time, like conscious or unconscious alone time, like sleeping by yourself for 8 hours is the same as being awake 8 hours, not being conditioned by emotional stuff. Like yeah,
Ah,
you're going to be awake and have awarenesses being by yourself, but the process is still happening while you're sleeping,
right.
so you kind of wake up with awareness. This is my experience. You like
Yeah.
wake up with awarenesses. But it's important to be away from people for a little bit so that you can feel what you feel like.
What do you notice the difference is with your emotions versus the emotionals in your life? Like, how are your emotions felt and expressed versus like Weston or Andy?
Mine kind of have to be like pulled out.
Mm.
Or I get this sense from somebody that I'm with where it's safe to let them out.
Yeah, to me, it feels almost like very sudden with you. It's
Yeah,
like
it
all of the
is.
sudden it's coming out, and you're
Yeah.
like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
my eyes are wet.
Yeah, I'm just like, "Oh, I've
I'm
said it
feeling
multiple.
things."
I'm feeling emotions. Like I don't even
It's like you have to state it out loud, like I'm feeling things, because it's almost surprising for you because it catches you off guard. It like hits you out of
it
left
very
field.
comes out of my body and it's not really in my mind. Like it doesn't matter. Like obviously if you're watching something sad or you're going to maybe have a sad reaction to that and have some tears. But sometimes it's just expressing, and then I start to feel feelings, and it kind of like radiates up my body, and it's like, oh, I'm feeling some feelings, and then I gotta be like, what is that, and I take
Mm,
that moment and I'm like, okay, is it because of the person that's sharing with me and what they're saying or how they're about to feel? Because that will happen too. Like
yeah.
I'll have the emotion right before the person that I'm sitting in front of starts to express that emotion, or I'm sharing and it's my own stuff that
Coming
comes
up.
up. So it's just taking that moment. But I didn't have that awareness before I understood how important it was to be by myself so I could feel that stuff by myself. I can feel what's mine
Mm-hmm.
and I can feel what's not mine.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's plenty of times where you and I are together and you're emoting and I
Mhm.
feel no emotions in that moment. I'm
Right.
like,
Yeah.
you're not amplifying anything in mine. Like
Yeah.
maybe being in my presence like helps you express it more in a way,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
I know it's not my feelings that are coming up because
Yeah.
I feel like very neutral in that moment and I'm like,
Yeah. And um, before I was harboring all my truths, um, and before we let the cork off, I would only feel safe expressing them around certain people. And I mean,
mm,
there's still that to the degree of like, I would hold them in for
confidant.
so long. Yeah, confident. But I would hold them in for so long that when I had the opportunity, it'd be like, here's all my emotions.
Bam. Yeah.
Boom. They all need to come out right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the right person just is like, so how's your day? And and no, my day is fantastic, but I need to fucking cry apparently.
Like
Like,
I've been
no.
emotionally constipated and now it's all ready to come out.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens. And that emotional constipation isn't always all mine, but also it's, being comfortable like saying things like when I'm talking to somebody, oh, I'm feeling some tension around here. I'm feeling a little bit nervous. And it's just being comfortable to express how I'm feeling in that moment, even if it's not my own, because I could be sitting with a group of people and start to feel nervousness. And that will break the tension of the room by me being comfortable being like, "Whoo, feeling a little nervous."
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Oh, me too." And then
Yeah.
my feeling like dips out. Like I'm not nervous anymore because I was never
Mm.
nervous in the first place, you
I
know?
feel like something I've noticed with you too over the last couple of years is not mentally identifying with the emotions.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that's like a healthy, undefined emotional or open
Yeah.
emotional is to just feel it. And I really
Yeah.
see you just committing to feeling the feelings in the moment, but you're not like attaching a story to them. And I
Yeah.
think that's helpful when you're like, I'm feeling emotion because you're not trying to come up with a story as to why
Yeah.
you're feeling the emotion or even
Mhm.
attaching something to it or yeah,
Mhm.
identifying with it because I think that is a lot of the wisdom that undefined emotionals end up garnering by observing their emotional process is like probably pre-human design you're identifying with every single emotion that you're feeling and you're
Mhm.
almost giving it too much weight,
Mhm.
you know? And so there is a piece of that whole well you're an emotional person. You're just not here to think or like read into them too much,
Yeah. I
you
don't
know?
draw into the motion. I don't like I just saw in my mind's eye like a syringe like pulling
Yeah.
liquid out of a vial. Like I'm not drawing it out to like, I don't know, with that slow looking at it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, "Yeah, there it needs to leave." And I don't know why I'm thinking about this too, but that kind of reminds me of like, brain spotting,
Yeah.
where people's eyes will go to a certain place. If you've never heard of brain spotting, you can tell when people are telling a story and their eyes move to a certain place and they start to feel, they start to cry. Let's say they look down and to the right, and when they're telling you a story, and they get really emotional when they look down and to the right, and they'll look away and the emotion will go away. And then they'll look back down and to the right as they're telling the story to make it like it's like drawing that liquid into the syringe. It's just reaching in there,
Yeah.
you know, because our minds will just do that. They're
Totally.
and so it's like I'm not doing that, going in that.
Yeah. Whereas for me, it's like I think of my emotions as data.
Yeah, I don't.
And I might not be like identifying with an emotion because we still want to be aware of, the feelings come and go and you're going to cycle through them. But it's like how does this information make me feel? Or what data am I gathering as I move through each feeling? What truth emerges with each cycle?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, what truth is consistent with each emotional cycle? Because I could be feeling one way one day and then a totally different way another day, but there's always like an underlying truth that sticks around,
Yeah.
even through all the different feelings and all the cycles. And for me, it's like a slow simmer, and
Mm.
it feels like a buildup at times where it's like, and this might be like the 659. I don't know where I would pinpoint this exactly, but it almost feels like this slow simmer that all of a sudden I have an awareness, but it's like taken a really long time to gather that
Yeah.
and many cycles. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden the soup is ready and I'm here to ladle it up and
So
share
you're
that.
defined emotional. You're a crock pot. I'm undefined emotional. I'm like a pressure cooker.
Yeah. Yeah. You're the Instapot. It'll just be
Pressure
woo.
release.
Yeah. Yeah. Where I'm like, ooh, that soup's been chilling for a while and it's
Mm-hmm.
still simmering. Let me taste it. How does it taste
Yeah.
today? Let me taste it. How does it taste tomorrow? And then, like, by the time I'm ready to share it with people, it's been cooking for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, I'm not surprised when the emotion comes up. Like, when I'm
Right.
like crying about something, I'm like, oh, I'm not surprised that I'm emotional about
Yeah.
this. This has been cooking.
Mine's like set up manual 10 minutes. Boom. I don't know what it's gonna can't even taste test it during the cooking. I have no idea what's going on in there.
It reminds me of when we taught the generate class, or
Yeah.
I don't even know what to call it. It was like
The
an
intensive.
intensive.
Yeah.
Such a good word for what it
It
was.
was such a great
Because we
intensive.
were like, we don't want to use the word immersion because everybody uses that. We're like, it's going to be intense. It's an
And it,
intensive.
it was. It
But it
was.
was funny because we separated the defined emotionals and the undefined emotionals. And whenever we'd come onto the undefined emotional call, all of them would like blow their load in the first 10 minutes. It would be like immediately into
Oh,
deep emotions and
yes.
expressing. And I
Yes.
remember I was always surprised because I was like, whoa, we're not even going to warm up here. Like, we're not even
No,
going to
there's
like,
not
there's no
no.
foreplay.
No, there's none. There's none. And then
It
we'd be
was
in
just
the
boom.
emotionals group and it'd be a longer
It'd go
call
over time
and it
always.
would
Yeah.
be slower and everybody would slowly get into it. But it's like when you opened up Zoom on the non-emotionals, we were all sitting there like, I'm ready to cry. I'm ready to cry.
Yeah. I know what I need to talk about. I'm ready to burst. Like, everybody knew exactly what they needed to express. Whereas like with the defined emotionals, and this was feedback that we got, like a lot of them had already had their feelings or felt their stuff that day or that week, because we would do like weekly calls, and they were just coming into the group to like process it
Yep.
and share, but they didn't necessarily need like feedback, or they didn't need to like be in the feeling in that moment and express it. It was more of like, oh, this is some clarity I got to, or like this is something I experienced, but they would be sharing from like a very neutral place,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I thought it was gonna be the opposite. I thought the emotionals were gonna be
No.
like the
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
that was such an
Mm-mm.
interesting experiment to do.
It was.
If
It
we
was
do it again,
fun.
I feel like I'd just combine everybody, because I think there's so much for emotionals and undefined emotionals to learn from each
To
other.
learn from each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they all became friends in like the
Mhm.
Slack chat or whatever.
Mhm.
And
And friends
I
in real life
and friends in real
too.
life too
Like,
now. Yeah, that's crazy looking back at
yeah.
that and
Yeah.
seeing where everybody is now. But yeah, I feel like I loved that experiment. But yeah, if we were to do it again, I would just throw everybody in the same pot, cook them all
Yeah.
together.
Okay, no crock pot, no pressure cooker, you're going on the stove.
Yeah, you're just all going in. Let's just see what happens. That would be the next experiment. Be like, I want to
Yeah.
have our gate 36s want to have a new experiment, a new
Mhm. Mhm.
experience.
Mhm.
See what
Mhm.
happens this time.
Mhm. That was so good.
It was so good. I really do want to do it again.
Yeah. That was so good.
I just love
But
generators.
yeah, just 8 weeks of generator intensive.
Just
Uh-huh.
like, we didn't have what was so cool too is everybody who signed up just really trusted us,
Mhm.
and nobody. I was just talking to our friend Brian who had signed up for it, and he was saying, I had no idea what I was signing up for with you guys. I just knew that I liked you guys and I didn't
Yeah.
need anything else. You know, I was just
Yeah.
signing up for the experience, and we didn't make any promises. We were just like, we're all just going to show up and we're
Mhm.
going to talk about our shit and we're going to look at charts and whatever's alive for you that day, we're going to talk about it and coach you through it. And that was it.
It was very impactful for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got really great feedback.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Good stuff.
Maybe we'll do it again someday.
I hope so. You know, I feel like with us, we're like, I don't know, sometimes less is more, you know?
Mhm.
I feel like in the quote unquote like coaching space, there's this pressure to constantly be launching and doing things and figuring out ways to make money. And that just doesn't really feel like me, you know? It feels like just at the right timing, you know, when it's right to do something again. And it could be really great, but it's just like not the right timing to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the people who are meant to be in it aren't ready yet, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when neither of us has a response to do something, it's just because it's just not the right timing. And we don't attach any like labels to that of like, oh, this was a failure because we didn't do it again. It was actually a huge success for
It was
us.
huge. Yeah.
Hugely satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were like so satisfied from it. We were like, oh, we don't actually want to do that again yet.
Yeah.
We don't need to force it.
Our
You know?
minds are like, and again, and
Yeah.
again, and another one.
Yeah. People are asking, why don't you do it?
Like, no, we'll do it when we're both a yes.
Yeah, when we're good and ready.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
announcement before we hop
Announcement.
off because I'm feeling the energy start to wrap up.
Uh-huh.
Our friends Kelsey and Allyson are both fifth lines, and they are doing a, I guess we call it a course called Heretic Haven. And you can check it out, Heretic Haven on Instagram. I will link it in the show notes. And if you are a yes to signing up, you can use code Coffee Talk 55 to get $55 off. And I have nothing but good things to say about Kelsey and Allyson. You might already know them if you're in our network. But yeah, they're just doing some really cool stuff. I've never seen something like a container that is specifically for fifth lines.
Mm-hmm.
If you were in the generate, you know, we like to use the word Pyrex instead of container. I had to stop myself from saying in that Pyrex.
In the Tupperware. In the Pyrex.
Because we just the word container is so overused, but
it's valid. It's
but it
valid.
works. I get why people use it.
Tupperware,
Yeah.
Pyrex. We prefer glass.
Um,
Kelsey's fantastic. We've interviewed her on Human Design Coffee Talk. And if you follow her on Instagram, just she provides so much value just existing.
yeah.
Definitely will make an manifest or impact in that Heretic Haven.
Yeah, and they just did an episode. Allyson and Kelsey just did an episode on Amanda Purcell's podcast, Reflector Life Podcast. I think that's what it's called, right?
Yep.
Reflector Life,
Yep.
which was really good. So I'll write a note to link that to you. I love Amanda, and she asked them really good questions, and they had a really vulnerable conversation about fifth line. So if you want to get their vibe, you can go listen to that. So yeah, code Coffee Talk 55, our first affiliate program, hopefully the first of many of things that we actually like. You know, we're fourth lines. We know we have influence, but so we're only going to ever attach our name to something we truly believe in.
We're very careful about that.
Yes. Yes.
Especially
do you have any
me. I talk
announcements?
about something and no.
Okay.
Not that I can think of. No.
Sorry I interrupted you. What were you saying?
Oh no. I was just
we
going
talk
to say
about
that our influence. We got to be careful.
Yeah.
I talk about something and people will be like, I want that. And I'm like, I don't know if it's for you.
Right.
Follow your strategy and authority.
Yeah. But that's all, you know, that's all even if we are trying to quote unquote sell you something, we still say follow your strategy and authority. It's what matters most to us is that y'all are just doing what's best for you. So
and we always want to promote and recognize people that are doing awesome shit in the human design community.
Yeah.
That are, you know, on our side, like trusted resources about our authority. And you'll have a good time with Kelsey.
Yeah.
And she's just fucking cool.
Yeah. Kelsey is a 5-2 manifestor, emotional manifestor, and Allyson is a 5-1 emotional projector. So you'll get lots of emotions into the depth you'll go. And Allison's also, I believe, she has a like strong background in teaching, and I've never taken one of her courses. I know I don't know if she's still doing it, but she's taught a lot of courses on like color, and the feedback that I got from people was just like she's such a good teacher, and you can tell that she has a strong foundation in teaching. So
Something about those emotional projectors.
yep. Yep.
Good.
All right.
All
Well,
right,
thanks
everybody.
for tuning in. We will see you next time.
Peace out.